Would the secretary read the roll, please?
Sure. Robert King.
Here.
Carla Morano.
Here.
Joan Mead.
Here.
Mary Comstock.
Here.
Paul Swenson. Here. Mary Cronin is going to be absent. Diane Cervello.
Here.
Ed Torian.
Here.
Okay, and minutes of the meeting. Did everyone receive their minutes for the last meeting? And would the secretary like to read them?
That's the one question.
Would the secretary,
Can't answer that.
would the secretary please read them?
The minutes from our meeting on July 28, 2008, the commission had discussion, accepted the minutes from the July 14, 2008 meeting with certain corrections, and the commission heard input from the public. Mr. Reed Mitchell spoke about the differences between Danbury and the neighboring towns in local governmental structure and process, and he urged the commission to be cautious in making changes to the charter. He also expressed his concern that getting information from Danbury's government was difficult, particularly getting the plan developed. Lynn Waller spoke about her concerns over the mayor's bonding proposal and pointed out the difficulty in going to referendum in Danbury with the charter's requirement that a petition be signed by 15% of Danbury's electors within 30 days of the notice of adoption of the ordinance. She also felt the commission should meet more often. Mr. Al Robinson spoke in favor of eliminating the city clerk's position, also in favor of keeping a non-referendum bonding limit at its existing amount. He also supported retaining 2-year terms of office.
Peter, can I stop you for a second? Sure. Did the asbestos clause or something, or was that just a kind of a reporting statement? He asked us about how much advance notice she received to appear, or when she was asked to appear in the city clerk. We have to get back on the
But I don't believe so. No.
Okay, thank you.
Some questions about when and how invitations city clerk.
So we don't have to do that. Thank you.
The commission had intent to section 7-5 regarding emergency bonding, and after that, unanimously to adopt the changes proposed by the mayor in his submission to our commission. The commission had discussion regarding proposed changes to Charter Section 7-3E regarding the city's capital budget and the specific non-referendum bonding to meet the needs of a portion of the capital budget. During the discussion, Commissioner Swenson proposed a different amendment to Section 7-3E, which would require the City Council to receive the capital budget no later than February 15th of each year. The Commission voted in favor of the language proposed by Commissioner Swenson to require the Council get the capital budget no later than February 15th, voting 6-1 in favor. Those in favor were Swenson, Comstock, Bezade, Torian, Cronin, and Cervello. Opposed was Mead. The Commission had some further discussion regarding the mayor's proposed change to limit non-referendum bonding in Section 7-10, but no motions were made to adopt those changes, and the matter was dropped. The Commission agreed to discuss changes regarding Charter Section 6-9 that involves special police at its next meeting on August 11th. The Commission discussed adding language to the charter requiring a periodic appointment of the Charter Revision Commission, but again, no motions made regarding that proposal. The Commission discussed and voted unanimously to adopt the proposed language of Commissioner Comstock for the preamble to the charter.
Peter, on point 7, did we not instruct Rick to work on language that would require that in the charter? Right?
Talking about periodically revisiting the charter.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there was a motion, but it was withdrawn.
You have a handout?
Right?
I have a handout.
Then you were going to...
He has a handout.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Those are the minutes.
Thank you. Any revisions or corrections? Then the minutes stand as read.
Yes.
We will open the meeting to the public. Would anybody like to address us? And you may do it from your chair if you would like.
It's going to be really short and sweet. I I understand that you have the President of the Council here tonight. I had hoped that you would ask both sides of the aisle, minority and majority, to come in and speak on the city clerk position. Partly because I know that even, it's not really a matter of parties, but when whichever party's in the minority, sometimes the information doesn't get out to them. It happened to the Republicans when the Dems had a strong majority, and it's happened to the Dems when the Republicans have a strong majority. So I had hoped that you would invite people from both sides of the aisle to speak to the issue of city clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address us? Yes.
I'm assuming 182 Osborne Street. One thing in reference to the meetings from the last meeting, I did request to find out exactly what dates and times this commission requested the city clerk to come before you and present her case. So I did request that, and if I have to do that in the form of a Freedom of Information request, if that's more formal, I can do that.
I don't think it's necessary.
Number two, I know we have the President of the County Council here today to answer questions. I heard them while I talked about the city clerk position. I reviewed the presentation that the city clerk gave, and to the commission, I did hear her say something about having assistants work with her. Now, my impression on the charter is that only the Common Council can approve assistants in terms of assistant city clerks. So if you can ask the Common Council President to clarify us on how the city clerk can have assistants, because again, my understanding is based upon the charter, only the Common Council can approve assistants to work there in that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address us? Seeing no other members of the public, we'll move on to our agenda. First agenda item is Common Council President Joseph Cavo. And I think, as I told you, this would probably be a rather wide-ranging discussion. We're open to any and everything you'd like to tell us about. Let's start with the city clerk position. How do you see it working with the council, and whether it should stay in the charter, and any other things you want to do? I'd like to, again, just remind everybody, this has nothing to do with the personalities involved. This is about a charter position, and should this position be made in the charter? So, Joe, if you would like to start.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation here tonight. One of the things that I will tell you about is I'm generally a person of few words. I've never had an opportunity to speak before a Charter Revision Commission, and I'm happy that I'm able to be here tonight. My feeling with the city clerk's office is that I believe it should remain an elected position by the public, and as it has in the past. One of the things that I think was problematic with the office years ago was that there was a city clerk, there was also an assistant city clerk, and the functions of the city clerk were not actually being carried out by the city clerks in the past to the fullest extent as required by the charter. And when we were in office, I would say probably 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, sometimes the time runs a little bit close to each other, we had talked, we're looking at cost-saving measures for the city, and one of the things that we wanted to do and tried to do and have accomplished doing was to push the duties of the city clerk back to the city clerk. They were being done by an assistant at the time, and we felt that they belonged with the city clerk per the city charter. So one of the things we did was we reduced the assistant city clerk's position down to half-time, and we put the duties back on the city clerk. And Jeannie has, I think, stepped up remarkably well in her duties. I think that she's come up with some innovative ideas for all of us to help streamline the city business. You know, push the business of the council forward in a more timely manner. And it's had its problems, and we've had our changes, and we've had things that we've had to work out, but for the most part, it's worked out very well. We have opened up a lot more to the internet, trying to open up a lot more to the internet. We're trying to work on cost-saving measures, and I think someone had mentioned it before the meeting had started about advertising and public notices and a way that we could save money by not actually taking out legal notices in the legal section of the paper. If there was another method or form of media that we could use that would be more cost-effective to the taxpayers. So a lot of our realignment through the council's office has been in the cost-saving measures, and I think we've done a good job with that. Our per diem minute takers have been working out very well. It was a little sketchy at first, but whenever you make changes, I think you're always going to have glitches and bumps in the road, and you've got to just kind of work those out, and the team's done a real good job of working that out. As far as the comment or the question about the hiring of an assistant, we had questioned Corporation Counsel's office to the process, and we had questioned personnel to the process, and we were told that, you know, the clerk, with the approval of myself as the president of the council, could hire a part-time per diem person to take minutes and to work in the office helping put the agenda together at the end of the month before the next council meeting. So that's hopefully would answer that question. We had run it by both personnel and corporation counsel's office for permission to do that. So,
Any questions from anybody on the commission at this point?
Mr. Cavo, certain members of the council have been here to speak to us, and those members, albeit not from the current majority party, expressed a very strong view that they believe that there should be some office or professional or full-time staff to lend support to them. And I think I took it secretarial staff, you know, a place to get where they would go get whatever they needed to perform their duties in the council, a place where they would get correspondence, one central place, and I think they were talking about somebody of a secretarial or clerical nature. Do you think there's such a need for the members of the council to have such a place or person?
I would tell you that I think that the clerk fulfills the duties of that. She handles all our mail. She handles all our correspondence. If there's correspondence that comes in for a specific council person, she usually makes a phone call. What used to happen in the past was the mail would get put in the mailbox in the council caucus room, and it would sit there. And Jeannie has taken it upon herself to call specific council people and say, hey, there's a letter here for you. You should probably come pick it up, or would like me to forward it on to you. In fact, it just happened today with me with a report from the Film Festival Commission, and she asked me about delivering it, if I would deliver it, or if she should have someone deliver it, or she should mail it. I was on my way home, so I just went by and picked it up, and I delivered it. So, you know, that function, I think, is being covered by her office.
Okay. Leaving Jean out of this for a minute. The way it's structured now, we have an independent elected city clerk whose duties are, at least on face to me, in the current charter, appear a little vague. She's independent. It can be anybody of any party, not necessarily the majority party on the council. And that position, the city clerk, doesn't appear to be answerable to the council, nor is it answerable to the mayor. Do you have any view on whether or not, you did say you prefer to keep a current elected city clerk. So is it your opinion then that there should always be an elected position fulfilling this basically clerical or support service role to the council?
Yes, I do believe that the public should decide who the city clerk should be.
Other questions? I have a couple, Mr. Calvo, because people have come before us and they talked a little bit about the confusion within the office, especially when people call in and they really want the town clerk, but because we're a city, they go to the city clerk. And if you've listened to her voicemail message, it is very long, basically saying, if you want this, go here. If you want that, go there. So that clearly the name needs to change, or probably should be changed from the standpoint of confusion.
Absolutely.
But one of the things we've heard over again is, not with this clerk, but with previous clerks, there were some political issues. That some party, the minority party, seemed ill-served by the person who was serving as city clerk, but there was no way of doing any oversight because the city clerk technically answers to nobody. So one of the questions it seems to beg is, if we made it a non-political position, would it not then become a situation where a minority party wouldn't feel abused by the city clerk? And if we put them under the purview of the council or the mayor, there could then be some either oversight or some assessment of how they were doing their jobs and things. You pointed out that Jeannie's doing a great job with so many of the innovations she's made. That's perfect. But if we had a person in there who wasn't as motivated and wasn't doing a good job, there's no provision in the council to assess that person and to maybe get them to do a better job or to even oversee them. So one of our questions is, should this position come under either the mayor's authority or the council's authority, so that then maybe one of your committees would have to get together and hire a clerk or a couple of clerks to do the true clerical work that the council needs done, and that it would then be your committees that would have to do the oversight and in effect hire the people. Does that make any sense?
I understand what you're saying there, and one of the things that I would tell you is that Jeannie, and I don't mean to go back to Jeannie, but Jeannie is the only person that I've worked with. And Jeannie and I have worked very well together. Anything that I've asked Jeannie to accomplish for the council, she has done.
No question.
Some discussion, as there would be probably with most people, but I would tell you that the council, as a legislative authority of the city, would want their clerk not to be supervised by the mayor. If there was a minority mayor and a majority council, you may not want the clerk of the council being supervised by a minority mayor, or vice versa, whichever the case may be. You may not want that supervision. And I think the way I understand the operation of the council and the clerk is, the clerk is, although maybe vague to you, has been, from my experience, has been answerable to the president of the council for the functions of her office, or the office. So I would say to you, if you had a civil servant in that position, because I think that's probably where you're going in the direction of the question. If you had a civil servant in that office, if the civil servant happened to be strong in one political party or the other, could still cause the problems that you spoke about, previous clerks being politically involved, and then there's really no oversight of that unless you have the mayor oversee them, or the council oversee them. If you have a council that comes in that's a minority party, or one party or the other, and the clerk is of a different party, you have problems that way. I feel that it's better that the public elects the city clerk, and the public elects the city clerk at their will, and by what they know the actions of that clerk is. I will agree with you that I think there needs to be some differentiation between city clerk and town clerk. I think it's very confusing, and believe me, her message, I've talked to her about it, and it's just very difficult because she comes in and finds 15 messages on her phone that belong to the town clerk.
Right.
And she's trying to make it as clear to the public that she's not the town clerk, she's the city clerk, and to please redirect your call. And she tries to head off some of that. She still gets calls that are messages left for her for the town clerk.
So when you hire the assistant clerk, how did that process happen?
That process happened through personnel, with myself and the city clerk being involved in that process.
So the personnel had resumes or posted a job?
Personnel had resumes initially, and I believe on the hiring of Mary Foley they did as well. And one of the things that I felt as president is I don't have to work with the assistant city clerk as much as the city clerk does. So I let Jean sort of take the role in who she thought she could work the best with. I don't have that much interaction with the assistant city clerk. The duties are more clerical, and they follow more of the what they're directed as by the city clerk. So I felt it was better to let Jeannie make that decision. If she approved the person, I met the person, didn't do an extensive interview with them, but for the duties, I felt that she was totally capable for their duties, and that she should be able to be hired, and if Jeannie was happy with her and what her qualifications were, then I was fine with that.
And is she civil servant?
She is not civil service.
Because she's not full-time?
She's not full-time, she's part-time.
But if she were to become full-time, that would then make her eligible for civil
She would
service?
have to become a civil service posting, I believe, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Gottschalk can probably answer to that.
And who oversees her duties and her workload and things? Is that done by the city clerk?
That's done by the city clerk.
So the council isn't doing that specifically, but she's reviewed each year for performance?
That would be done through personnel. It wouldn't be a function of the council.
Would not be a function of the council.
It wouldn't be our function to review. If we were having problems with her, or we were having issues where things weren't getting done in a timely manner, or she wasn't performing her duties, or chronically sick or absent, certainly we would step in. I would step in as president of the council, and, if Jeannie was saying to me that she was having problems with this person, then I would certainly step in. But I think it would be more of a personnel issue.
And it would probably be done through the Human Resources or Personnel Department.
Correct.
So if someone wasn't performing in that position, it would go back through the city's administration.
Correct.
If I were elected the city clerk in the next election, and I just decided that I didn't want to work with you, what would you be able to do about that? If I was just not helpful?
Well, I think that you would still have to perform your duties to the extent of your elected position. And outside of that, I don't know what my recourse would be. But luckily for me, that hasn't been an issue.
Right. Well, that's one of the issues we're dealing with, is that the people that are in the positions that are in the charter now are all performing very, very well. So we don't have any problems with the mayor, so we're not trying to cut his terms, and we don't have problems with the treasurer, we don't have problems with the city clerk, with the people in those positions. But we've heard in the past there were people in those positions that didn't perform their jobs. But because it was a charter position, there was no recourse and there was no oversight. So it's been suggested that if we take those positions out of the charter and make it a regular human resources position where perhaps the council or perhaps the mayor or perhaps the council and the mayor would choose people to be staff in those positions, if they weren't performing, if they weren't opening the office on a regular basis, if they weren't treating both parties the same, it would go up through the human resources chain, and the person's review would be reflective of that. I guess we're trying to figure out, should we be trying to put in a position that somebody, the mayor or the council, would have oversight over that position, since it does seem to be an administrative position to the council. And if we leave it in the charter as is, someday we may have a bad person in that position, and there won't be any recourse.
Well, I think there would be a recourse in the next election with the public. And I think that, somebody, one side or the other, would have to bring it forward to the public about what's happening in that office and what's not happening in that office and what needs to happen in that office. And I think that as a paid position in the city, if you wanted that position and you wanted to keep your job, it would behoove you to do a good job and serve the council as fairly as you can and continue to keep your job, rather than it become a civil service position where after a certain period of days, you pretty much can keep that job unless you committed a really violent crime or something, and you can step around it that way.
That is also very scary.
Whereas the public every 2 years has the option to say, this person, from what has been told or what's been said or what's been done, brought out in public about their actions, the public can make the decision on whether that person stays or goes.
Okay.
And I think it's important that if you want to keep your job, you better do a good job.
Yeah. Thank you. Bob, did you?
Yes. It would seem that as an elected position, it would require to be independent to perform that role. Is that what you view that position to be, that has to be independent?
Yes, I believe that to be an independent role within the city.
The duties of that office, I think, are both clerical in nature, and also I think if I read and listen to some of the testimony, it deals a lot with legal issues in terms of posting ordinances and following time schedules and so on and so forth. In your role as president of the Common Council, you also get counsel from the legal staff, am I correct?
Every day.
Why wouldn't they be elected then?
I would believe that the Corporation Counsel's office of the city is an entirely different office, separated from the elected positions.
Right, but my point was, Joe, if I may call you that, that there are responsibilities that employees, if you will, of City Hall have to perform for the mayor and for the Common Council, and specifically the legal department. And I was wondering, since a lot of the, or at least a portion of the city clerk's position, goes in that direction, if it were decided that by this commission to not have it an elected position, if it were reporting through the legal department, would that make any sense at all? They would be responsible for providing that type of a function. And that would give that position the independence, not having to work for the mayor directly, but maybe reporting into the legal. Do you have enough thought about that?
The only thing I could probably say to that is that usually the chief legal counsel for the city is appointed by the current mayor when they come into office, correct? Mm-hmm. So technically, the legal office could have some type of control over the city clerk through the mayor's office, since the chief legal counsel for the city is appointed by the mayor when they come into their term.
But what about assistant counsels and so on and so forth? Are they appointed by the mayor? They are.
So I think that's where the difference would be. I think there's a contact there between the legal office and the mayor's office that would, work its way around to, it could come from the mayor's office through the legal office.
I think the problem I have, quite frankly, is that one of accountability for this individual to whom they report to. There have been different things about availability, people in office, and I choose not to look at the current office or past offices, but what's the right thing for the city as we look forward. The position has existed ever since it was consolidated between the city and town, John. Mm-hmm. I look to my historian here. And it's often come under review by both parties. Is it needed? And this is the time for us to look at it in the charter. I have a difficult time looking at a, quote, a clerical function performing a service is needing that kind of an independence and to be an elected position. And I think that it could serve as equally well if it were somehow a permanent position where you don't have the potential of turnover and everything else. Because as Jeannie sat here and told us, it requires a lot of skill, a lot of training, and as is the town clerk, that the town clerk had, 18 months to go through their training program. So these positions, which are critical to the operation of the government, in my view, to certainly the Common Council and to the rest of it, I'm wondering if the city isn't better served, rather than taking a chance of turnover through a 2-year election, if we don't have it as as an on-staff kind of position, and somehow have the administration and the Common Council work out some sort of, detail on how that person could serve both, if you will, because it is in the best interest of the city, from my view. Thoughts?
I hear what you're saying, and I think that it is just one of the positions that the public needs to decide on.
Okay.
And I can't express that any stronger than I have. I think that it's a situation. Carl has spoken about previous clerks and problems that were had, and I can see that happening with it being a civil service position. And I would prefer that office could be changed every 2 years based on the borders of the city of Danbury.
But that could be dealt with if it was a civil service
Well,
position.
it can and it cannot be. I will tell you, I'm a 24-year employee of the city. I don't know how many of you members know that. I've been working in the city for 24 years, and I will tell you that it takes quite a bit to get somebody dismissed from their job. You have to be very malfeasant in your duties in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great line that you can walk that, would prevent you from losing your job. And I just see that as being problematic if it would become a civil service position.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I just
Mr. Torrey.
want to, between the two-year interims, are you saying that the council will then have to put up with, for lack of a better term, this incompetence before the electorate will speak and vote her out of office? I mean, that seems like awfully long time from the council perspective to have to deal with that stumbling block, roadblock. I mean, just I don't like to use incompetence, but the fact that the job's not getting done, essentially.
Well, I will tell you that in the years that this position has been in place in the city, I don't know all the historical data to it, but I will say going back probably 30 years, the office has been served fairly well by elected officials in that capacity. I'm sure everybody in every council at the time has had their issues with the city clerk, but I think that they're manageable and they can be worked out. And as long as people are reasonable about their expectations and the requirements, and I certainly wouldn't run for the city clerk's job if I wasn't qualified to do it. I just wouldn't do it. So with the proper guidance, Jeannie, I don't know how much experience she had being a clerk, but
Could you hold on a minute? Thank you.
she certainly didn't have a lot of help when she came into the office, and there wasn't really a great spirit of cooperation there, but she managed to make it through it and has been steadily making improvements in the office.
Any other questions?
I just had one other comment. The Common Council has the option also of hiring somebody.
Absolutely.
If the city clerk is not being cooperative, they can go ahead and hire somebody to be an assistant, which was the case for years and years. There was always an assistant city clerk because at that time, the current city clerks never really did the job.
They actually weren't required to, and that was
No.
what the issue was. They weren't required
Right.
to. And one of the things that we did was we followed the charter pretty closely and said, this is your duty, and we'd like to see you carrying out those duties. And we don't mind hiring somebody to help you, but this is your job, and you should probably be doing it. And that was the change with Jeannie. And that was the change with the council 4 years ago.
And then what we have to rely on at this point is the political parties to make sure they don't nominate somebody who is totally unqualified for the job.
But there's
Are
also...
you looking at me?
No. Are you running for something?
City clerk.
There's also a lot of help available. Corporation Counsel's office has been invaluable in deciphering the charter, giving recommendations based on their interpretation of the charter and the city ordinances and resolutions that have been passed by the council. And I know I go to them every week for clarifications on things, and it's just the nature of how it operates. And I would say that any city clerk would do the same thing in order to do their job function properly. And if they're not doing their job function properly, 2 years comes and the public decides whether that person keeps their job or doesn't keep their job.
Okay. Anything else on city clerk positions? Would anyone like to ask? I'm
Can we ask other questions?
Yes. You look very excited, Peter. Go ahead.
Mr. Cavo, we've done, we can call you Joe. Joe, we have looked we've done a few little things in terms of the duties of the Common Council. We've raised the amount that can be contributed as a donation without council approval. We've looked at the requirement that sewer and water hookups have to go before the council. Are there any changes that you would like us to see in the charter that would make the council work a little better or more effectively so you could spend more of your time on bigger issues facing the city?
Some of my suggestions were just those. the donation limit we would like to see increased. One of the things that we have done and tried to streamline the sewer and water application process is the request would always come before us. We would always go form an ad hoc committee. We would sit with the city engineer and usually the petitioner's engineer, and they usually have pretty much the plans hashed out on these, and they usually just sit before us and say, you know, we're going to do this, this, and this, according to the 8 steps, or add a 9th step, add a 10th step, and we usually look to our expertise in the engineering department to say, you know, we can work with this or we can't work with this, and then we would make a recommendation to the whole council. And one of the things that we did, and it was at my discussions with the city clerk as to ways to streamline this process, because sometimes these things were getting caught up and they were being held up for 2 to 3 months sometimes, and some of these issues are very time sensitive for contractors. So we changed the process to where the application requests come in to us and we forward them directly to engineering to planning for reports. And through that, we've cut down a tremendous amount of issues, and I know that's not charter related, but it's just some of the ways that we've internally worked to try to help streamline and clean up the process in the council. You know, we were a fairly new group, but a lot of us were fairly new to the political arena, and you know, just bringing our different points of view from different areas of our lives and our business area expertise into and making things streamlined. So I would say that the only thing that I would ask you about tonight is a term limit, is term length. I would like to see the council's term length go to 4 years.
Okay.
I think that would be very beneficial. I think it would, bring you really qualified people who would be dedicated and who would not be stepping up unless they knew it was a 4-year commitment. And the learning curve is tremendous in this. It's just tremendous. And by the time you just start getting your feet on the ground, it's already time to start running for a re-election. And I think it's just time consuming. I think it takes you away from your service to the public and your constituents when your election season comes around. You just, for a job that you don't get paid for, you volunteer to do, it's a lot of effort. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort to, especially when you're a city council person, to run an election and also work as a city council person. So I'd like to see that change to a 4-year term. As far as the...
Would you recommend the other offices also, the mayors, the town clerk?
I think they should all be a 4-year. It would be my recommendation that the city clerk, the town clerk, the mayor's office should all be a 4-year term. I just think that there's so much that has to happen, so much that has to get done. By the time you get it rolling, you're up for re-election again. You know, some things you can't see through fruition, and I think that 4 years is not unreasonable. As far as the rest of the council's operation, I'm pretty pleased with the way things are going. I don't know how much has to change. And I think the public's been pretty pleased with the operation of the council.
Are you happy with a 21-member council? Should that be reviewed?
I'd like to see the 21-member council reduced.
Do you think we could ever get them to vote on that?
I certainly will vote on it.
Okay.
I certainly will vote.
How would you organize that?
You know, I have given it some thought over the years. I see a 7-member council. I see a member from each ward to represent each ward in the 7 wards of the city.
It's interesting.
And, you know, I think the number is just unwieldy at 21.
Could a 7-member volunteer council remain volunteers doing this at night, or would they, with the workload, overwhelm them?
I don't know if the workload would overwhelm them. I'd have to really give that some serious thought. I would tell you right now, I work a full-time job, and even as president of the council, I don't feel that I'm overwhelmed. I do have periods of time where I do feel that, but then for the most part, there's, you know, I'm not overwhelmed the majority of the time. Council week, prior council week, putting the agenda together, it can be a little bit stressful, especially holding a full-time job, but it's manageable. It all depends on your dedication.
Well said.
If we, I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
It's okay.
No, go.
I just had another question about that, too, on the size of the council. What about doing 15 members? Do one from each ward and 8 at large?
My personal feeling on it, it's still a large number. I just always had the thought in my head of 7 members for the council, just a member from each ward. It is certainly, I mean, it's certainly up to you to decide that.
Then would the 7 council members need staff of their own?
I think that they would still use the city clerk and the hired assistant city clerk as their staff. I don't know that, although the workload may change from a council person.
That's what I'm referring to.
I don't know that you would need to have a staff other than the city clerk and an assistant city clerk, part-time assistant city clerk. But that's something you probably should all discuss and decide. That's just my personal feeling on...
We're happy to hear it.
That's just my personal feeling. The number is just way too large. And I think going to 15 trims it some, but doesn't trim it enough. I don't know. I haven't thought enough about that.
I was just trying to come up with an odd number where there were enough other council people representing the city as a whole, rather than just their individual wards.
Bob, did you have a question or comment?
Are the common council members compensated for their time at all?
No.
No. Should they be, given the expansion of responsibility that they have and the city has grown? I'm sure the amount of time spent by the common council has grown tremendously as well. Is that something that should be considered?
I can't speak for the entire council, but I'll speak for myself personally. I believe the positions should stay unpaid, volunteer. I think that if you have a desire to serve, there's a certain giving that is required upon your service. And I think that paying council people, in areas where I've seen paid council people, I don't know if it's the right thing to do. For myself personally, I would rather stay a volunteer position. I think it makes people who genuinely are interested in public service come forward. Council people talk to me about, they know of other councils in other towns of New York that get health benefits and they get paid, and I just don't know if that's the way to go. I prefer to see the council stay dedicated volunteers who genuinely care about public service and do it for that reason and that reason only.
Are they reimbursed for out-of-pocket expenses?
There's a provision in the charter that I believe allows for that in the section that covers the common council, but I don't know that in my tenure on the council and as president, I don't know that anyone's ever submitted a request to be reimbursed for any funding.
We're very fortunate. Thank you,
I
Jeff.
think, and the other thing is that I don't think any council wants to be the council that votes themselves. They should be paid.
Probably a short way of getting unemployed.
Any other questions or comments? Peter?
Mr. Cavo, the internal work, Danbury's charter and its tradition of the mayor being the presiding officer of the council it's something I'm very used to. I grew up in Danbury. I'm very familiar with it. I guess I'm sort of comfortable about it. But as we look at the charter and we look at the legislative branch, which you represent, one wonders, is it necessary, do you believe that shouldn't be changed? Maybe the president of the council should be the presiding officer of the council. Maybe the president of the council might be the one who sets up committee assignments. Do you see any benefit to that? Not necessarily for our current administration, but going forward in Danbury?
I have really never given that a lot of thought. Like you, I've only known this form of government here in Danbury where the mayor has always been the presiding officer of the council. And It seems to work fine. When we have public hearings, I preside over the meetings because it's an opportunity for the public to come and speak to the council itself and not the mayor's office as well as the council. So there is that separation, and it does happen at times. I really haven't given it much thought.
You know, I thank you for your frankness of you know, saying your personal belief is the council should be radically smaller, and that just opens up lots of questions for me because we have sort of a balance in Danbury. You know, we have a very high referendum threshold. We have 2-year terms of office, and all those things enter this calculus of balance in some way. And if we were to radically reduce the number of council people with our present strong mayor form of government, one wonders why we wouldn't try to make the council more independent then of the mayor, you know, at the same time, to make them more separate if we were to do that, or to allow something that we haven't done in a long time, is change the provisions regarding a referendum, make it easier for somebody to go to referendum. Because we sort of are changing the balance of power a little bit. If you're down to 7 members and they're all of the mayor's, you know, party, it's kind of hard to get a different point of view across, especially with a 4-year term.
And I think that minority representation would still come into play with that, with a 7-member council, and you know, that's there for a purpose. You know, like I said, it's my personal feeling that the number could be drastically reduced. You may not feel differently, and other people may not feel the same way. It's just my opinion.
I'm interested in the idea.
Anything else?
I have one question.
Well,
Do you think the council needs separate legal counsel?
No, I don't think so at all. Because I think that the Corporation Counsel's office interprets the charter, resolutions, ordinances in a manner which they probably should be doing. And I don't know that, I'm not really sure why that would be necessary. As far as I'm concerned, the Corporation Counsel's office has done a fabulous job. You know, and has been backed up by other outside counsel as well in matters of questions or legal deciphering of how an ordinance was written or what the intent was or what the legislative intent was. So it's worked well. I think it's worked very well.
One other topic.
Go ahead.
No, somebody else has spoke? Go ahead. No. Topic is bonding, which is something that this commission has studied, you know, with great detail. If you go back to, I believe it was sometimes early in the spring when the mayor presented a budget, he had 5 programs that he had submitted to the Common Council. The minority representation on the Common Council objected because it was the first time that that particular interpretation of the charter had surfaced, where instead of a $500,000 cap, that it was interpreted as per project as opposed to per year. Several members, I think, from the opposite party voted against the projects because of the interpretation. The commission here has increased the amount to the trigger point to $2.5 million with no other wording or provision in there for a trigger. Do you feel there should be a trigger point other than the $2.5 million or cap?
I think the $2.5 million cap is adequate.
Per project? Per project?
Per project, yes. In this current time, do you know, if you don't mind me asking, do you know when the last time that number was increased? Do you know when it was increased to $500,000?
No, I don't, but the number is well underfunded, no question about that. I think whether it should be 2 or 2.5 or some number, I think the 2.5 is certainly
a step in the right direction. But I think it's not the number that is driving this issue, it's the interpretation of a per project basis, which literally any administration with a 2/3 vote of the Common Council could pass a number of bonding issues that would be in astronomical numbers as long as you could get the support of the Common Council. In other words, the only cap is the $2.5 million per project. It had been suggested by the mayor, had been suggested by others that a quote cap or a trigger point other than that be adopted, so it would require a referendum. Not that the projects wouldn't go, but it would require a referendum.
I think one way that you would tie a trigger point into that is to go by your percentage of bonding and your percentage of indebtedness, and you may be able to put a cap on that. I think that might be probably one of the logical ways to look at it. Currently, right now, I believe we're 5.5% indebtedness in our bonds currently outstanding, and certainly the charter revision would make a suggestion to cap that number at a certain percentage so that it can't be out bonded, so to speak, or no particular mayor or council with 2/3 majority could exceed a certain percentage of that indebtedness.
We're not trying to put handicap an administration or a mayor or a future mayor on his need to invest in the city. What we're simply saying is, should there be a trigger point that says he should go to referendum to the public to get this approval? That's the only difference. We're not saying we're going to cap the total indebtedness. We're just simply saying it's something that to require him to go to a referendum.
I would agree that there should be something to cap that. What it would be, I think that would be best left up to the financial people to make a recommendation on.
Okay. The indebtedness, by the way, I think there is a policy in effect that the administration has adopted and other cities as well, and that limits the total indebtedness under certain trigger points that they have. So I think that's covered. I think it's just a referendum piece is what we've been struggling with. Okay, thank you very much.
Peter? We're done? Anybody else? Questions or comments? Thank you very much. Very well. Anybody want to make a motion or anything at this time, or shall we?
I want to make a motion to add a discussion with Chief of Police Alan Baker to the agenda as part of what is item 3, and I'd like to enlarge item 3 on our agenda, which is a discussion of Charter Section 6-9, to include other relevant portions related to the police department.
Okay. A motion's been made to expand the discussion with the Chief of Police. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing
Thank you,
none,
Joe.
I will try your minds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We've expanded the discussion, Chief.
You're here for a treat.
Yes, I'm here for
And thank you for your patience. That was a little longer than we had hoped to hold you up, but all right, you're here. Would you like to start by telling us
Sure,
what you've written?
First of all, last October, November, Mayor, at one of his regular cabinet meetings, said that this commission was going to convene, take a look at the charter, ask for any department head input. And so I took the information back. At one of our regular staff meetings, we discussed the relevant sections of the city charter with our staff, came up with 3 suggestions. Those were forwarded to the mayor, and I see that they've been forwarded to unedited. This is exactly what came out of the police department. First one is 6.3. The current language requires that all appointments to the police department be confirmed by the council, and I guess I would suggest that you consider changing or actually eliminating that provision. Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the state of Connecticut establishes standards for screening and employment of police officers, and we follow those standards. We have to follow those standards by state law. And the way the current system works right now, when somebody applies to be a police officer, first of all, their application is screened by our personnel department. It's then screened by the Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission does a physical agility test. They do a written test. They then do an oral interview with the candidate. Then they certify a list. Once they've certified the list, they're interviewed by the personnel director and the police chief. They are given a psychological test, they're given a polygraph test, they're given a medical test, and they're given another physical agility test. So once somebody's gone through all those tests, which sometimes take 4 or 5 months, we have a pretty good idea whether this person is fit and going to be a good police officer or not. And the current language in the charter requires the mayor to bring that in front of the council. And just 2 observations about that. It seems to be one that's kind of a perfunctory task. I've never seen anybody on the council not be approved unanimously. And for the employee, it's kind of burdensome because they have to appear at night, then they have to appear again the next morning to actually take the oath by the corporation council. And so I think between the safeguards that are in effect and are promulgated by the state of Connecticut, and just as a convenience sake, like I say, I was hired as number 579, and I think the next person we're going to hire is number 613. So there's some 30 plus in my tenure, which has been about 3.5 years. Nobody's ever been approved other than by unanimous vote. So it's largely a ceremonial type thing that I don't really think is necessary. So that's suggestion number 1. Suggestion number 2, qualification for the police chief. The charter right now sets some minimum qualifications. You'll note it doesn't require a college education. And all I did is simply pull the job or the application back when my job was advertised back in 2004, and use the language that was used in the job announcement back in 2004. And the language they use, bachelor's degree from accredited college or university, such as criminal justice, public administration, criminology, or related discipline, and at least 10 years of experience in policing. Strong preference includes a master's degree in a related field, 5 years of upper-level management experience, advanced training with the FBI National Academy, Southern Police Institute, Senior Management Institute for Police, or other recognized management development course. That was the language that was used in 2004, and that's pretty much standard language. Speaking from experience, that I've applied for jobs on the East Coast, I've applied for jobs on the West Coast, I've applied for jobs in the Midwest. This is pretty much the standard language that's used in all modern police departments today. So I would suggest updating to, at a minimum, setting a college degree as a minimum requirement. The other thing in that section I didn't recommend changing, I'm the only person on the police department that has to live in the city of Danbury. I think that's a good idea that the police chief lives in the city of Danbury, becomes a stakeholder, becomes part of the community. I think that's important that stays in the charter. That's why I didn't, it's in the same section, 6-9E. And then our final suggestion has to do with special police officers. Special police officers, I guess a long, colorful history here in the state of Connecticut, and they were primarily political appointments, by a mayor to reward friends with a badge and a gun. And there was no real requirements other than being appointed by a mayor to be a special police officer. They acted as an auxiliary or supplementary police force. Back in 1982, Connecticut required all police officers to obtain a certification to the state of Connecticut. And at the time, it was 400 hours of training that was required. And I'm not sure how many special police officers Danbury had back in 1982, but I'm told it was over 100, 150 special police officers. And they were given 5 years to go to night school and get their certification. So they had until 1987 to obtain that certification. Most of them did not. We have not hired any special police officers since that time, with 1 or 2 exceptions that were constables that were moved over to a special police officer status to serve in our dog serve as dog wardens. And the problem we have today is that there's no way you can get a special police officer certified, because today you're required 880 hours of training, 22 weeks, and you're required 10 weeks of field training, and you're required to attend a full-time academy to obtain that certification. There's no full-time academy here in the state of Connecticut that will take a part-time employee, simply because there's not enough seats for the full-time employees that need academy certification. So it's a thing of the past. We haven't hired any since the late 80s, and we're down to 13, and I suspect in the next 5 years, and they're all very senior in terms of tenure at the police department, that you'll see no special police officers here in the city of Danbury. So I just recommend we remove that provision from the charter.
Okay. I was really looking forward to getting my badge.
I'm not sure which party you're from.
Okay, questions or comments? I have a couple on that 6.9B. What would you do then about, like, dog wardens and things? They are not part of the police department, or they wouldn't?
They were hired to be dog wardens, but there are certain criminal laws that they need to enforce, so they were appointed as special officers. So I guess we just have to appoint police officers to fill those positions if they're going to take enforcement action, with regard to animals. And that's why they're special police officers now, the 2 dog wardens we have, is that they were hired to be dog wardens, but there are certain criminal statutes that they can enforce with regard to animals, and so they were appointed as special police officers, so they have that.
So what would happen in those positions? Would they then become police officers?
Well, that's the decision we'll have to make in terms of, do we want simply a dog warden that goes out and catches dogs, or do we want somebody that actually investigates and makes arrests? In that case, you're talking about a regular police officer that would have to go to an academy and obtain a certification and meet all the requirements for a police officer position.
What would happen to the 2 dog wardens? Would they serve out their tenure, or if we eliminated that section, would they just get...
I anticipate nobody that's currently a special police officer losing their job. This is just cleaning up the language. And like I said, we have 13 now, and we do use them on occasion. We also have a contract that requires certain minimum manpower, and we can't use a special police officer to meet the minimum manpower of a sworn police officer. So they're largely an auxiliary police force that does some more of the menial tasks, that patrols some of the parks and directs traffic, so that the sworn officers can concentrate on more pressing duties.
One area that I learned as serving on this commission is when we go to eliminate something, we better be sure that we're not triggering something else and then we have a domino effect. I was in favor of eliminating civil preparedness because it was a low budget, no personnel, but only to find out if we eliminated that, we would be losing grant money. If we eliminated this, would we be losing any grant money for the police department from the state or federal or anything else?
Right now, grant money is very scarce in law enforcement.
We don't want to make it more scarce, I guess.
I know of no grants, given law enforcement for having a special police officer,
Okay.
special police force.
No, I just-
a lot of committees refer to them as auxiliaries.
I'm just sensitive to that. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Is there another mechanism in a manner that a retired city police officer could come back and work part-time? Is there another mechanism for that without being a special?
Working as...
For instance, you've got a certified guy who's been to the academy, a police officer, and he retires, and provided he doesn't retire on some disability, why can't that person be called upon to direct traffic, patrol the parks, do the other menial tasks that would free up the regular police force? Wouldn't that be where you would want to put those people?
Sure, and we're certainly considering that with civilianizing our dispatch. Right now, police officers answer the telephone, police officers dispatch the cars. Retired police officers...
She hold me for 1 minute. Okay, sorry.
So we're considering retired police officers in those types of positions, and that's through the Civil Service Commission and our Personnel Department. That's not something that we, the police department, would hire. And I could envision something similar, but having a special police officer that, or not having special police officers, I guess I don't see that impacting that type of hiring.
Do the special police officers cover a lot of road jobs?
No, not. They
Rarely, seldom?
seldom. They get last shot at it. So.
They get last shot. But do you have trouble, when you have trouble filling road jobs, don't you look to those people? And would you want an avenue to have a qualified group of candidates? Would you want to put those people in that? If we eliminate that, you're not going to have anybody. Where else would you put them is my question.
Well, first of all, we're going to eliminate them through attrition. We're not going, but with regard to the question about road jobs, that's paid at a higher rate, so we have no problem filling any road job. It's the security jobs that we have problems filling, can't guarantee any of these security jobs are going to be filled at any time, even if there's special police officers on the bench. I mean, Italian festival this summer, there was unfilled jobs at that. We do the best we can, but even with special police officers, there are unfilled jobs.
Anybody else? Peter?
Chief, in the city of Danbury, we have the regular police, the sworn officers, as you referred to them. We have special police officers, and you mentioned constables. What do they do?
Constables serve legal papers.
Just the civil constables?
Right.
There's nobody else wearing a uniform affiliated with the city of Danbury Police Department other than the special police officers, is that correct?
Correct, that is correct.
Any other questions or comments?
Question regarding
Mr. King.
Homeland Security type activities. Do the assets that you have, are they sufficient to warrant communications between yourself, the fire department, and other departments in case of emergency in the city?
Right now, no. We are in the process of doing a radio communication study, to bring us up to that interoperability, but right now, no, that interoperability does not exist.
Should there be a Homeland Security type department in the city, or is there one?
I'm not sure what Mr. Esteban's title is besides airport administrator. He fills that role. I don't know if it's called civil defense or
I think it's
emergency management. Or
preparedness.
he fulfills that type of role right now. And somebody needs to fulfill that role, coordinate police, fire, emergency medical. You know.
It doesn't exist today, you're saying?
No, I'm saying Mr. Esteban fills that role right now.
But I think that's the same role that was in effect since long before 9/11. Am I correct, Rick?
Yes, it's always been in the chart.
Yeah. You feel there's any void that should be beefed up in any way or anything?
No, I think that a part-time position is
Thank you.
sufficient.
Okay. Other questions or comments? We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It was very helpful.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Moving it along smartly.
Any other discussion on that? Motions at this time, or you want to talk about it? We'll move on.
I would like to just bring up one thing, Carl, as I said. I think the chief's letter was the basis for this one item in the mayor's letter, which must have been condensed. I don't know if we want to act on the chief's letter or we want to act on the mayor's recommendation, which seems to have a different content.
Mm-hmm. What I'd recommend then is maybe everybody take a look at the mayor's letter, compare it to the memo that they sent us from the chief, and maybe that can be an agenda item for the next meeting and with
think that
a
would be
possible motion.
For example, in the mayor's letter, unless I missed it, I don't recall him mentioning anything about eliminating the special police force.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just while you're all thinking about the content of the chief's letter and the mayor's letter as well, with respect to specials, bear in mind the possibility that even if you eliminate the language of the charter, you may still have the flexibility to hire retired police officers, for example, or maintain a special police force. What the charter requires is that you shall have a special police force. If you eliminate that language, that doesn't prevent you from having a special police force.
Good point. Thank you.
Still get a badge then.
You might, yeah. It's unclear what it will say.
You planning on retiring and directing traffic, are you?
All right, well, thank you very much. Good point, Rick, thank you.
So if we eliminate that sentence, it's not going to prevent that body of people?
Correct.
from being-
That's
It's not going to prevent it?
Yes. There's nothing that would prevent, for example, a chief from consulting with a mayor and deciding to create a position within the police department to be filled by somebody with a variety of qualifications, including approval by the state.
So we don't need may language. We don't need
You don't need to enable it,
enable it, that's...
no.
As long as we don't prohibit it. Okay.
Correct.
Good. Okay. Next item on the agenda says it's organizational review of the charter for required positions and titles of positions held. Rick, you have a handout. Was it regarding this, or was it something else?
I have a variety of handouts, Mr. Chairman. But I don't have, although I have corresponded with a variety of department heads, none of the handouts relate to departmental or reorganization or organization.
Do we need to put your handouts on our agenda, or are they things to be acted upon, or?
Frankly, it's it would be great if you added an item to your agenda, and that way we could do everything according to Hoyle.
Okay.
I make a motion that we hear from legal counsel on items of...
Relating to last month's actions and the 10-year periodic review of
Of the
charter.
charter. Okay.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we add those agenda items as specified. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're unanimously accepted before the...
I have handout, but not much to say about them. This,
No, we can't withdraw now.
first is a sheet that shows the preamble that you adopted. Thought you might all want a copy of that, a clean copy. Next is 7-5, dealing with emergency appropriations. In each case, these three handouts indicate at the top that this is language that was approved. And is this the one that there was one that referred, there was a typographical error in to the departments rather than by the departments? Can't remember which one that was. Oh, it might have been 7.3E, which is coming next. And I just inserted that, and at some point, when you're preparing your draft report, my expectation is that you'll approve all of these again, or just ratify the language or something. Capital improvements. This is the February 15th language that was proposed by Commissioner Swenson. So all three of those reflect, at least I hope, what you did last time. And the last handout that I have is suggested language that you requested relating to periodic charter review.
Now you have three.
And at this point, of course, it's just for discussion. And I think you requested that I propose language that would replace the existing language of 8-11. So that's the way this is framed. And that's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. In the language on the things that were passed, does anyone see any changes or questions, need clarification?
I think
Any typos?
way back in February, we had actually voted to delete Section 8.9, so Section 8.11 is now Section 8.10, I think. So
8-9.
We deleted 8.9, which was...
police and firemen's pension funds.
We will go back and review minutes and make sure that we did.
Yes, we
But
did.
yes, we did, according to my notes.
Yes.
Thank you. Three of us found it, that makes it official.
So we can call this 810? Rick's,
It's too bad, because on 811, we could have passed 811.
We still can. Just leave the other one blank.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to discuss this, the language for periodic charter review?
Why the date 2019?
10 years.
10 years.
It's 10 years from now?
On or before. I'm sorry. Thank you. On or before.
And this is replacing what currently reads as amendment of charter. Is that what we're doing?
I think we eliminated that, didn't we?
Yeah, in 811, it's very simple. This charter may be amended in a manner prescribed by law.
Right.
And this is simply saying that there will be charter revision. Do we want to force that on a future city? Since they can do it when they feel they want to? Is it critical?
It says shall consider and act upon a resolution. I don't think that, is that?
It doesn't
leaves it up to-
require them
that's
to
not a
engage in
requirement,
charter
yeah.
revision.
So the council would simply have to have a discussion of it and vote yes or no to have a charter
That's
revision
correct.
commission.
That's all this requires of them.
The current requirement of state law in order to initiate charter revision governmentally as opposed to by petition calls for the adoption of a resolution that this language would require that they consider. Doesn't mean that they have to adopt it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Question, yes.
And obviously, because it says on or before July 15, 2019, if something comes up beforehand, they can do it. We don't
Sure.
have to, right, that's what that means.
Any other discussion?
Some horrendous thing.
Do you want to make a motion at this point, or do you want to put this in our unfinished business?
I make a motion that we accept the language for section 810 or 811?
Will be numbered 810?
It would be
810.
numbered 810.
810, as submitted by council.
The motion's been made and seconded that we accept this language as submitted under section 8-10. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, final thing on the agenda. Organization.
There is one thing with these other handouts.
Yes.
In the preamble, Rick, I believe at one point, prior to adopting this, I had made a motion, and I think it passed, about adding some language. Do we have to go back and correct that? It was regarding the form of government. And it was, I think it was like a we moved 1-4 to 1-5 and added a 1-4 or made it a 1-5, the mayor and common council form of government.
Yes. That was,
Do we have to change that?
I don't remember it being
I think it passed.
something that was approved, but I could be wrong.
I think it was. I mean, my memory could have lapsed, on this issue very easy.
It's hard to be chairman and keep track of all this stuff, huh?
You were missed sorely last week by all the commissioners.
Yeah, okay.
1-4, Commissioner, is general grant of powers.
Right.
Additional
changed that.
powers granted.
We'll change that to
Right.
1-5.
Say as-
One-
Yes.
Right, is that right, Joan?
1-5.
Yeah, and we added a form
And
of
we
government
added a
language.
1-4.
I don't know if we ever worked out the language. I don't have that file with me tonight, my past file.
I have this.
I don't know that that was ever adopted.
Okay, that's what we,
That's,
My note says
discussed
add
that.
legalese.
pardon me?
My note says add legalese.
Okay.
But
But I think what happened after that, Commissioner, was that I wasn't sure how to do that. And so the conversation just stopped.
Well, to cover ourselves, do we have to do something different if we had adopted this there's no need for it now with the preamble, is my point, because it's part of the preamble.
I think that the motion was instructing me to evaluate this, and I came back and was in confusion, and so we moved on to something
Okay, is
else.
that consistent with?
That's exactly what we did.
Fine. Thank you.
So we're ignoring this, we're not
Right.
inserting this, and we're leaving section 1-4 as is.
That's correct.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. We ready to move on to the organization review of
Yes.
charter-required positions and titles of positions held? Okay. Barbara, did you want to start that?
Yeah, I make a motion that we put this on a future agenda.
Good.
Okay, Bob.
Because I think we're,
Well, then,
Let's go through this. Is this section 6, is that what this is referring to?
Yes.
Treasurer, administrative departments,
Yes.
appointments of officers,
that's where the bulk of it is.
all the way through 6.
Carl, basically, we discussed several, bless you,
Thank you.
several approaches to doing this. And we covered this off at the last meeting, but just briefly, our charge from the mayor, as I recall, was to do a thorough review of the organization, which would include updating job descriptions, titles, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I question whether this is the panel to do that, from especially the organizational piece of it. That I think if I understand the mayor correctly, for us to take a look at organizations, I don't know that we're prepared to do that. I don't feel that I am when we speak for myself. I don't have enough knowledge to do that. If he wishes to get involved in that, I would think that using an outside resource to do that. If it's a matter of updating titles and responsibilities, then I think we need more input from either the mayor or the department heads to move forward in a manner. Do you?
Any questions?
If I may,
This is the mayor's letter to you, I believe it is, anyway? Yes, from December 3rd. And he's indicating that he's interested in having the commission review names and designations and modifying charter sections to reflect reorganizations that have already occurred.
Like the
So
Department of Welfare.
for example, you have the Department of Health and the Department of Welfare, two separate sections in the charter, and what he's proposing is that since these functions have been consolidated, that the names need to be changed, and perhaps the language in each of those sections, those separate sections, get merged in some way. So while I appreciate what Commissioner King is saying about getting involved in evaluating how a department ought to function, which really strikes me as well as being way beyond the scope of your charge, what the mayor is asking for is really much narrower.
So shall we ask that you
Change the name.
prepare what those would be with the mayor's
If you would like me
office?
to, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I think that's...
Although, I think a preliminary conversation with the mayor
Okay.
would perhaps be in order with respect to those specific
Okay.
items. I know he's talking about, in addition to health and welfare, there was communication from the personnel department proposing a change in that title. There was a reorganization of the Parks and Rec and Public Works departments,
right.
where functions were merged or revised in some ways. And so I think those three, unless I'm forgetting something else. Am I forgetting something else?
The risk manager's position as well.
Risk management, sure, there are subsections of the charter within the finance department that we probably don't call it data processing anymore. Perhaps information technology would be a better designation.
That's what it's called anyway, so we might as well change
I
it.
don't think that,
Right.
Well, I guess my question is, does that stuff need to be in the charter? Do you need those descriptions in there if obviously the city can change what the departments are and how they're organized for the sake of being more efficient? We'll have that discussion. We'll check with the mayor's office, find out what they have in mind, and either eliminate them or come back with some updated names and things. But we'll
So-
just get some input.
All right, Carlo, but in terms of merging the language of the health department and rolling it into the, or rather rolling the welfare department into the health department, are we going to generate that language? I mean, it's not much. We could just take that section and
It's
just...
not much.
It's not much.
I mean, I wouldn't anticipate it being a lot of work.
One of my questions is, should the charter have that much detail in here? Does it in any way tie the city's hands the way we have to have a city clerk because it's in the charter? This is 17 sections in Section 6, 16 sections in Section 6, describing very specific positions that have obviously become out of date and have been reorganized. Does a city charter need that, or can the mayor and the common council pass legislation that in effect establishes how the city's organized? Does it need to be specific in the charter? And do we want to leave it in the charter if it is? Because whatever we do will become outdated before June of 2019 anyway.
I think
And
there's...
that's an open question to the commissioners. Do we want to take out an entire section and just say the mayor and the common council will have the authority to establish the departments of the city for the maintenance of the blah, blah, blah stuff?
From my point of view, I think there need to be some departments that are fixed within the charter. For example, a financial department. There is also a personnel department is needed. But I agree with you when you get into the detail of all of the responsibilities and all the qualifications. I'm not sure that that belongs in the charter. That could be a part of a job description and subject to change by the mayor with the approval of the common council. And the job descriptions could be on file in personnel. I'm sure they must have such documents now. If not, they should be created. But I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this ties the hands of people, and in effect, they may be violating charter positions by not having them.
Good.
And we've heard that.
Why don't we meet with the mayor's office and just get a little bit more direction?
We're going to put this on the agenda again because we need to sit down and go through it now that we're in the summer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the fact
So
is...
will this be on the agenda for next time? And do you want me to rephrase it? And I'll take the language from the mayor, and I'll specify in the agenda what roles we're going to do, and so everyone will have notice of that.
Let's try to do that, and we will try to get a little more direction from the
Not for
mayor.
the next time. I think we should schedule that in September, because I don't think the mayor is going to be available. He is in Portugal. He gets back, I think, on the 15th, and I'm not sure he's going to have time on his calendar.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have the
So
answer.
the first meeting in September.
Sounds
Is
like-
that
sounds
the
good.
consensus of the commission?
Sounds good.
All right, and I'll specify in the agenda what we're talking about
Yeah.
specifically.
And we will try to have much more specific input from the mayor so that we can do that. Mr. Gottschalk.
Just by way of information, if you look at Section 6-2, which identifies various departments, you'll notice that it contains some additional language saying that the common council has the authority to create other departments as it chooses to have. So I've always assumed that this document created a minimum, a floor, upon which you could add departments. So, you know, one point of view that you might entertain is, what do you have to have? Knowing that the council can always add positions by ordinance or create additional departments if necessary. That's how we wound up with the personnel department originally. It wasn't in the original charter. So that flexibility is in place. What flexibility does not exist is to have less than what's in here without running the risk that somebody is going to call you on having violated the charter. So when you deliberate, bear in mind that what you're doing is creating the bare skeleton. You can add more, with risk. But I think that that's your charge, is to figure out what that minimum ought to be.
Peter, when you had mentioned the risk manager, what was your point on that? Because that is a position that's delineated. Does the city have a risk manager?
I believe we have somebody who just fills it. He has several roles. We don't have a separate
It is not a-
individual person doing that anymore.
Okay, because here, clearly, there's a risk manager shall be responsible for the identification, analysis, and evaluation of risks or hazards which can affect the ability of the city to perform its services, and shall determine methods to minimize such risks. So what you're saying is somewhere there's someone whose job that is, but it's not a specific position, and this doesn't require the city to have one position that is only a risk manager position.
I think it's a fair interpretation.
All right, that will be a future agenda. What other ideas do people have for the agenda for the next meeting? Are there other issues that we have not addressed that you would like to bring up?
Well, I think
Or to review?
let's see.
You know what? Why not discuss the number of members on the common council?
I agree.
Okay?
I agree.
And it's Pandora's box, but why not have a discussion on it, and we either up or down, and that'll be that.
What about referendum in the city? Do we want to take a look at that? Current numbers, the percentages, and the timing involved on that?
I had February 25 at least.
Right. I think
Yeah, we
decide.
counted that in for next time.
Oh, good, okay. Can we send a correspondence to the common council members and tell them that we're going to be talking about the numbers of them in the future?
I think they'll probably hear about it.
Should we not do that?
We have two right there now.
Can you guys spread the word?
We need 20 more, yeah.
Can you each talk?
Have a good amount of admiration for what you're stepping into, so.
One meeting, boom.
Could both of you talk to 9 people and bring them all in at our next meeting?
We may be able to get something that week.
I'm serious.
Oh, he's back here.
In effect, it's going to become an agenda item. We would love people's
Yeah,
input.
We'll
because
try to target
there's a
that
week
day.
in between.
We'll try to-
25th. Is that a Monday?
Maybe we can get that into the 20th. I'm sorry, I'm thinking the next meeting is the 18th.
August.
I think probably protocol on that would be to notify the president of the council, to notify all council members.
We're not that strong on protocol, quite honestly.
Can we just call the city clerk?
Sure.
Yes.
If the city clerk refers to the president, let him do that.
All right, this is getting out of hand. Is there anything else that should come before this?
Are
Paul?
we going to consider the chief of police next time? We'll vote on it?
You want to put that back on the agenda?
I think it should be on the agenda. We should either discuss it, vote it up or down. You'll have time to think about it. Although, do we want to wait till after we've had a chance to talk to the mayor? Because
I think we...
since he's not around, perhaps that should wait a little bit. I guess I'm not sure why this correspondence was different from the mayor's correspondence.
We may be able to meet with him prior to the next meeting. Okay.
I guess we can table it if necessary.
You know what, let's put it on the agenda, we will deal with it, and it may be tabled, or we may be ready to move ahead. Anything else? I guess what I'd ask you to do is go back through your previous notes, find issues that we wanted to discuss that we may have missed.
There is one other item that we could add, either, it doesn't have to be the next meeting, but we should do it soon, and that is to have our council take us through everything that we've passed today. So everybody
have it in one
is on the
concise
same
packet.
page. And then we need to, I think, discuss how we're going to approach the preparation of the report.
Yeah, I think we're coming to the end of what we're doing here, so it's time to take a look at what the end looks like. So let's do that for the final agenda item then. So, Mr. Gottschalk, if you could prepare all the things we passed in one packet, I'll bring a stapler.
Are we doing this on August 25th?
Yeah, let's at least start it, if you're able to.
Oh, I have,
You've got it
I've
easily.
been pretty organized when it comes to this commission.
You're a better man than I.
So I'm clear. You want me to reproduce 9 copies of the documents, for example, that I gave you tonight?
Yes. In effect, we want each one that has been approved, and if it would say that, final approval, if you got it, the date that it was
Already got it.
approved.
Could you hold on a minute, please?
Why don't we- If everybody brings their own files and anything is missing, then they can come back to us.
That makes, I like that idea better, to save a tree, because
You could just make one, and we could...
What we'll do is, we will have one copy of the master list of everything that was passed, so that you can go through. If you're
Make
missing
sure we
something, we
track
will get you that copy,
That's better.
and then we'll all have one complete copy for year-to-date, what's been approved. We will then have our agenda set for the final meeting or two, where we're going to try to enact, vote up or down, the few things that are still open, and then we will figure out how this looks to finish this process up.
Rick, is that on your computer?
yes, they're all on the computer.
Could you just
Email?
email me that
Sure.
that whole file then that you have,
Yeah.
all those things? And I can print them out.
Yep.
And I'll print out the copy and give it to you.
Well-
And you have, and if anybody else needs it, then I can print out copies.
Okay?
Sure. Absolutely.
Trying to
Paul.
save trees.
I'll share my copy with you.
Okay.
Since it'll be on my computer.
Is I can send an email to
Send
the
it to
two of
everybody.
you, and then you can distribute those to the
Yes.
three of you. You can distribute them.
Let's do it.
As necessary.
Yes.
And
Good.
people can print out what they don't
That's
have.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're going to take us through it, right? You're still going to take us through it.
Sure.
Make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can make a decision of how this report's going to kind of start falling together.
Yes.
That you're going to write.
Mayor Comstock is going to write, "We the people."
Or that you are going
You're out of order.
to delegate.
Is there anything else you would like to discuss? Or add to the agenda?
Yes,
Hearing none.
bonding.
I think we have enough on the agenda.
Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Torian. A motion's been made, seconded by Mr. Thank you, Paul. You guys are going to...
We want to stay in course.
Motion's been made and seconded that we adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing
we
none.
have to
I will
quit
try your
now?
minds. All in favor of getting out of here, say aye. Opposed?
No.
To the left, everything you own in the box to the left. To the left, don't you ever for a second get to thinking you're irreplaceable.